No one had ever been able to tame Maximus. James Taylor, a battle-hardened Navy SEAL, muttered under his breath as he watched his dog charge through the park, knocking over benches and barking ferociously at anyone who dared come too close. Maximus, once a top-tier military dog, had been traumatized by the horrors of war. Now, back home, he was a wild animal, untamed and untrusting. James tried everything, commands, treats, even a firm hand, but nothing worked. The dog was beyond control. But today, something was different. In the distance, a little girl, no more than 8, stepped into the park. She held a stuffed animal in one hand and a look of determination on her face. James barely noticed her at first, too focused on the chaos Maximus was causing. But then, she took one step closer, and Maximus, with his wild eyes and growling bark, stopped. His ears perked up. The girl wasn't afraid. She didn't flinch when Maximus charged toward her. Instead, she simply knelt down, her eyes locking with his, and whispered something soft, something only the dog could hear. "It's okay, Maximus. You're safe now." For a moment, the air seemed to still. The park, usually filled with distant noises and laughter, fell silent. Maximus, the ferocious dog that no one could tame, lowered his head. His growls quieted, replaced by a soft whimper. James stood there, frozen. He couldn't believe his eyes. This little girl, this stranger, had done what no one else could. She'd calmed Maximus. The dog, who had once been an unstoppable force of nature, now sat at her feet, his massive body trembling, eyes wide and trusting. Emily, the little girl, looked up at James, a soft smile playing at the corners of her lips. "He's not so scary once you understand him," she said, as though she had just tamed a wild lion. James couldn't speak. His mind raced. What had just happened? Was this some kind of miracle? Maximus, who had torn apart his life and left scars that went beyond the physical, was suddenly calm, completely under her control. James had been fighting battles for years, against the nightmares from his past, against the loneliness that came with leaving the service. But in that moment, he realized he wasn't fighting alone anymore. And that was only the beginning of what Emily would reveal. But just when James thought he understood the depth of her connection with Maximus, Emily did something even more shocking, something that would change everything. James couldn't believe what he was seeing. Maximus, the dog who had been a force of chaos and terror in his life, now sat calmly at Emily's feet. His once wild, untamable eyes were now gentle and full of trust. Emily, with her soft, unshaken demeanor, had done what no one else could. But as James stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened, something even more unexpected occurred. Emily, still kneeling by the dog, reached in her backpack and pulled out a small, worn journal. She handed it to James without a word. James took it with hesitation, unsure of what to expect. The journal was filled with handwritten pages, each one worn and weathered. As he flipped through the pages, he realized it wasn't just any journal. It was Maximus's. Emily had been writing down everything she had learned about the dog over the past few days. She had spent time observing him, talking to him, and building a bond with him in a way James never had. Each page was filled with notes about Maximus's triggers, his fears, and the moments that made him feel safe. "I think he just needed someone to listen," Emily said quietly, her voice soft but filled with wisdom beyond her years. James felt a lump form in his throat. Here he was, a seasoned Navy SEAL who had been trained to face any challenge. Yet it was this little girl, this innocent child, who had cracked the code to understanding his dog. It wasn't strength that had tamed Maximus. It wasn't force or dominance. It was patience, understanding, empathy. James's mind raced with the realization. He had been treating Maximus like another soldier, expecting obedience and discipline. But Maximus wasn't just a soldier. He was a living being, scarred by war and the brutalities of life. And yet, in just a few days, Emily had shown him what he had failed to see. Maximus needed care, not commands. He needed trust, not fear. As Emily stood up and took a step back, Maximus rose to his feet, following her every move. His eyes, once wild and distrustful, were now filled with a kind of peace that James had never seen before. For the first time since he brought Maximus home, James felt like he could finally breathe. This wasn't just about taming a dog. It was about healing, a journey that Maximus and James had both been on for so long, but never truly understood until now. Emily turned to James, her smile wide and warm. "He's a good dog, Mr. Taylor. You just need to give him a chance." James smiled back, a tear slipping down his cheek. It was the first time in years he had felt hopeful. He had spent so much time trying to control everything around him, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to let go and trust again. Maximus walked over to him, nuzzling his hand gently. It wasn't just the dog who needed healing, it was James too. And Emily, with her kindness and understanding, had unlocked that path for them both. James stood in silence, looking at the journal in his hands, his mind racing. Maximus, now calm and composed, lay at his feet, watching him with those soft, trusting eyes. It was as if everything had changed in the span of a few moments. He had expected his dog to be a constant reminder of the war, of the pain and suffering, but now, for the first time in years, James felt like he was seeing Maximus for who he really was. Not a weapon, not a tool, but a companion. Emily had done what no one else could. She had given James a gift he hadn't even realized he needed. As he stood there, lost in thought, Emily tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Taylor, can I ask you something?" Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. James turned to her, his expression softening. "Of course, Emily. What is it?" She looked up at him with those big, innocent eyes. "Do you think Maximus will ever be happy again?" The question caught him off guard. Would Maximus ever truly heal? The dog had been through so much, years of training, battle, and loss. Could he ever be whole again? James knelt down beside the dog, running his hand through the thick, dark fur. Maximus looked up at him, his tail giving a small, tentative wag. James smiled, a small, bittersweet smile. "I think he's already on his way," he said softly. The weight of those words settled heavily on James's chest. Was it possible that both he and Maximus could heal? That the bond they shared, built on so much pain and loss, could be transformed into something beautiful? Emily smiled at him, a knowing look in her eyes. "I think you're right," she said, then turned to Maximus. "And I think you're going to be just fine, Max." The dog responded with a soft bark, as if agreeing with her. For the first time in a long while, James felt like he wasn't fighting alone anymore. He had a team now. Emily, Maximus, and himself. Together, they had already begun to heal, one step at a time. As the afternoon sun began to set, casting a golden light over the park, James stood up, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Maximus got to his feet, his tail wagging more confidently now, as if sensing the change too. James turned to Emily. "You know, Emily, you've taught me something today. You've reminded me that sometimes all it takes is a little patience and understanding. And maybe, just maybe, that's all we need to heal." Emily beamed at him, proud and content. "I'm glad, Mr. Taylor, and I'm glad Maximus is happy again." With that, the three of them walked together, side by side, heading home as the world around them seemed just a little bit brighter. Days passed, and the bond between James, Emily, and Maximus grew stronger. The park where Maximus had once terrorized people became a place of peace. Every morning, James would walk Maximus, feeling the weight of his past lift with every step. The dog, once wild and uncontrollable, now trotted beside him, calm and steady. Emily continued to visit, bringing treats for Maximus and talking to him as if they had been friends forever. It was amazing to James how quickly the transformation had happened, but he knew that it wasn't just about the dog. It was about him too. Slowly, he was finding the peace he had longed for since returning from the war. But one afternoon, as the three of them sat in the park, enjoying the quiet, a familiar face appeared in the distance. It was Officer Harris, the local police officer who had always looked at James with suspicion. He walked towards them, his face stern but not unkind. James stood up, feeling a slight unease. He knew the officer had never quite understood his past, or the bond he shared with Maximus. "James," Officer Harris said, stopping a few feet away. "I've been keeping an eye on you," and the dog. James stiffened, but Harris continued. I have to admit, I was wrong about him. I've seen him out here with you, and I can tell he's not the same animal he once was. James could feel his heart rate pick up. It was the first time in years someone had acknowledged the change in Maximus and in him. Harris looked at Emily, who was sitting on the grass, her legs crossed, a peaceful smile on her face as Maximus rested beside her. "You've done something special here," Harris said, his voice softening. "I think you've all done something special." James was taken aback. He had never expected this kind of acknowledgement from Officer Harris, who had always been skeptical of his efforts. But now, in this quiet moment, with Maximus by his side and Emily's gentle presence filling the space, James realized how far they had come. It wasn't just about taming a dog. It was about redemption, about finding peace with the past and embracing the future. "Thank you," James finally said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "It's been a long time coming." Officer Harris nodded, then turned and walked away, leaving James and Emily in their little bubble of peace. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the park, James looked at Emily. She smiled at him, her eyes sparkling. "I told you Maximus could heal," she said softly. James nodded, feeling a lump rise in his throat. "And you were right," he replied. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace, knowing that Maximus was no longer just a reminder of war, but a symbol of hope, of second chances, of new beginnings. The journey was far from over, but James knew they were on the right path now. Together, they would face whatever came next, with Maximus leading the way and Emily by their side. Weeks went by, and the transformation in James, Maximus, and Emily was undeniable. The bond between them had become something stronger than just companionship. It was a family. James found himself opening up in ways he hadn't thought possible. He had always kept his emotions tightly locked away, too afraid of feeling the pain of loss again. But now, with Emily's kindness and Maximus's unwavering loyalty, he was learning to let go. Each day felt like a new beginning, one that brought hope where there had once been only shadows. One afternoon, as James sat on his porch, watching Emily and Maximus play in the yard, his thoughts drifted back to the day he had brought Maximus home. He had been so sure that the dog would be just another burden to carry, another reminder of the horrors he'd faced. But now, he couldn't imagine his life without him. The dog had become more than just a pet. He was a companion, a symbol of resilience, and a testament to the healing power of time. Emily, too, had become a beacon of light in James's life. Her unshakable belief in the goodness of the world had inspired him to look beyond his scars and see the potential for happiness again. Maximus, once a living reminder of pain, now stood as a living proof that even the most broken parts of life could be repaired. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the house, James felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. He knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with Emily and Maximus by his side, he felt ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The little girl and the dog had shown him what it meant to heal, to forgive, and to love again. And for the first time in years, James felt like he was truly living, not just surviving. He stood up and walked over to Emily, who was now sitting on the grass, Maximus resting beside her. "Hey, Emily," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You've changed my life. You and Maximus both." Emily looked up at him, her face lighting up with a smile. "I'm glad, Mr. Taylor. I knew you both just needed a little help finding your way." James knelt down beside her, his heart full. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," he said softly. "But now I know I found a home, right here with you and Maximus." Emily nodded, her eyes sparkling with joy. "We're a family now, Mr. Taylor." James smiled, feeling the warmth of her words settle in his heart. They sat together, the three of them, in the quiet comfort of their shared space. In that moment, the world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the three of them, together, stronger than ever before. The days grew longer, and the warmth of the summer sun stretched across the sky as James, Emily, and Maximus continued to settle into their new life together. The house, once quiet and empty, now buzzed with the sounds of laughter, joy, and the soft patter of paws on the wooden floors. Maximus had become more than just a dog. He was a part of their family, a constant presence that brought comfort and stability. Emily, too, had grown close to him, the bond between them as strong as the one between her and James. She would spend hours in the yard, talking to Maximus and teaching him new tricks, her laughter ringing through the air as the dog obediently followed her commands. For James, watching them together was a constant reminder of how far they had come. He had never expected his life to turn out like this. He had been so sure that his past, with all its pain and regret, would keep him from finding happiness. But now, with Emily and Maximus by his side, he felt a sense of peace he had never known. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, the setting sun casting a golden glow across the landscape, James found himself lost in thought. He had spent so much of his life focused on the past, on the things he couldn't change, that he had forgotten how to live in the present. But now, with Emily's unwavering optimism and Maximus's loyalty, he had found a new way of seeing the world. It wasn't about dwelling on the mistakes or the things that couldn't be fixed. It was about embracing the people and moments that made life worth living. "Mr. Taylor," Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. She was standing by his side, holding a small box in her hands. "I made something for you." James looked up, a smile tugging at his lips. "What's this?" he asked, his curiosity. For the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever came their way, with Emily and Maximus by his side. As the seasons changed, James, Emily, and Maximus settled into a rhythm that felt almost too good to be true. The once silent and somber house had transformed into a home filled with laughter, warmth, and the comforting presence of a dog that had been a symbol of struggle, but was now a companion of peace. Emily's visits were a constant source of joy, and Maximus had grown into a calm and loyal dog, no longer driven by fear, but by love and trust. One crisp morning, as the leaves outside turned golden and began to fall, James sat on the porch with a cup of coffee in hand, watching the world wake up. The soft hum of the morning was accompanied by the gentle sound of Maximus's paws on the porch steps. He had become a regular part of this peaceful routine, always by James's side, a living reminder of how far they had come. Emily arrived a little later, her face flushed from the chilly air, but her smile as bright as ever. "Mr. Taylor," she said as she bounded up the steps, "Maximus and I have been working on something special." James raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's that?" he asked, setting his coffee down. Emily grinned. "I've been teaching him a new trick. Watch this." She gave a soft whistle, and Maximus, who had been lying at her feet, jumped up and ran in a tight circle before sitting perfectly still, his eyes locked on hers. Emily clapped her hands in delight. "He could do it now. I think he's finally learned to trust me completely." James smiled warmly at the sight. Maximus had come such a long way from the wild, uncontrollable dog that had once been a shadow of the man he had been. "You've done something special, Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Both of you have." Emily's eyes sparkled with pride. "I couldn't have done it without Maximus," she replied. "He's the one who helped me believe that anything is possible." The sun was now higher in the sky, casting a soft, golden light over everything. It was a peaceful, perfect morning, and James felt the weight of years of pain and regret slowly lift, replaced by something he hadn't expected: hope. For the first time in so long, he felt like he was finally living, truly living. And the best part was, he wasn't alone anymore. As Emily continued to work with Maximus, teaching him new tricks and reinforcing the bond they shared, James took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs. The past was still there, but it no longer held him prisoner. He had found a way to move forward, and it was with Maximus and Emily by his side. They had become his family in a way he had never imagined possible. James didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time, he was ready to face it. Whatever challenges came their way, he knew they would handle them together. He had learned that healing wasn't a destination. It was a journey, one that sometimes took unexpected turns but always led to new beginnings. He smiled, looking at Maximus, who was now sitting patiently beside Emily, waiting for her next command. In that moment, James realized that the greatest gift he had received wasn't just a dog or a little girl. It was the chance to be whole again, to live without fear of what the future held, and to embrace the love and companionship that came with it. The seasons continued to shift, and as fall began to give way to winter, life for James, Emily, and Maximus felt like it was falling into a perfect rhythm. The house, with its creaky floors and sun-dappled windows, had become a sanctuary. It was no longer just a place to live. It was a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet, comforting presence of a dog that had once been a symbol of war, but had now become a symbol of healing. James had learned to let go of the past, to embrace the moments of joy, however simple they may be. He had learned to laugh again, to hope again, and to feel again. Maximus, ever the loyal companion, had found his place in the family. His playful energy had softened into a calm, loving presence, and every day it seemed like he was discovering a new way to be gentle. Emily, too, had grown in her own way. The little girl who had brought peace to a war-torn dog had now become the glue that held them. Altogether, her smile, her endless curiosity, and her unwavering belief in the good of the world had a way of bringing out the best in everyone around her. One chilly evening, as the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, James and Emily sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets. Maximus lay at their feet, content and calm, his eyes occasionally lifting to watch the snow drift down from the sky. The world felt peaceful, almost surreal, in that moment. "Do you think we'll ever stop being afraid?" Emily asked suddenly, her voice soft as she stared out at the snow. James paused, his heart heavy with the weight of the question. He had never truly stopped to think about it before, but as he looked at her, this little girl who had brought so much light into his life, he realized that fear had always been there, lurking in the corners of his mind. But it wasn't the same fear it used to be. It wasn't the fear of war or the fear of losing everything. It was a quiet, almost subtle fear now, the kind of fear that only existed when you realized how fragile life could be. "I don't think we ever completely stop being afraid," James said after a moment, his voice thoughtful. "But I think we learn how to live with it. We learn how to keep going, even when the fear is there." Emily nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "I think that's what makes us strong," she said quietly. James smiled at her, a warmth spreading through him. "You're right," he said. The two of them sat there in the quiet, watching the snow fall, the world outside growing darker, but inside they felt lighter. Maximus lifted his head and let out a soft sigh, as if to say that everything was okay. And for the first time in a long time, James truly believed it. The journey wasn't over, but with Emily and Maximus by his side, he knew he was no longer walking alone. He was part of something now, something bigger than himself. And that, in itself, was enough to make the fear a little easier to bear.